I'm Dennis Ford, and we've got, I believe, about 30 minutes today to talk about fundraising. So I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Life Science Nation, and basically what we are is a holding company, and we really have three companies. The first company is a data company. We have an investor database where we have a staff of researchers who go out and poll investors. We give them a survey, they tell us what they're looking for, we write it up in a mandate, and then we give that mandate to them to edit, they give it back to us, and we put it in a database, and then we sell it to people who are raising money. So CEOs who are fundraising love our database because it makes them very efficient. So that's one database. And then the other database we have is a company database, and we have 30,000 companies that are typically biotech, medtech, and diagnostic, early stage startup companies. The other company we have is called the Resi Conference Group, and we had a conference here yesterday at the Marine Memorial Hotel right around the corner where we had 200 investors and about 300 scientist entrepreneurs that came to our event. We had 16 panels one of them was family offices who invest in biotech, and that got about 90 people in it. And then the one next door were family offices that invest in medtech. And so we're a really good fit when we talk with the Freemind guys because they're non-dilutive funding, but right beside non-dilutive funding is private early stage funding. So we have about 10 categories of investor in our database, which we'll go over. And then the third company we have is a company called Boston Innovation Capital. And what we're going to be talking about today is how we help those companies set up and get ready for a road trip and how to go out and raise money and like what are some of the processes and procedures. We also have a book that we wrote, which is called the Life Science Executives Fundraising Manifesto. I don't know if we're going to get any here. We have someone trying to get some, but we might bring about 10 or 15 over. So if they make it, we'll give it out to some members of the audience. So I always have these three questions when I meet a scientist entrepreneur who wants to raise money. And the first question is, are you raising capital? And if they say emphatically yes, that's always a good thing. But the whole issue with raising money, especially for scientists and entrepreneurs, because they're not sales, business development guys, and they overthink everything. And so if they're trying to figure out if they're raising money, they just go through this, am I raising money? How much money am I raising? Who am I going to? And how is it? So it gets very confusing. So when we try and help people figure out if they're raising money or not, we ask the question, if we can't get an emphatic yes, then it's like a red flag for us. The other one is, do you know how long it takes? Does anybody here in the audience have an idea of how long it takes to do a fundraise? That's good. Anybody else want to take a guess? What? Okay, there's two forevers. Okay, anybody else?
Always longer than expected.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So here's the thing. It takes somewhere between 9 and 18 months. If you're extremely lucky and extremely good, it could take 9 months. But typically, we have really good, super experienced CEOs with great technology. They've got great data. They're in the clinic. They're doing human trials. And it still takes them 15, 18 months. So it's a long process. And the other thing that's funny, if you raise $1 million versus 10 million, it takes the same amount of time. And then the other one is, do you know how much it costs to do fundraising for a year?
$60,000.
Not a bad guess. Anybody else got one? The answer is somewhere between around 80 to 120,000. And I know this because I know all of the things that you have to do. And so you guys all just came here from foreign lands or East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Europe, Asia, wherever. You had to pay for the plane ticket. You had to pay for the hotel. You got to pay for your meals. This is just one trip for X amount of days. And if you're on a fundraising campaign, you got to like multiply that out. And so it gets really expensive really fast. So there's another data point for you. When we talk about the investor landscape, we have a group of researchers interview investors. And so we really have a good idea of like what the investor landscape looks like and who's got what and where the money's at. And so a while ago, the investors that were in the VC space got a lot of money from family offices and foundations and endowments and institutions, and that were interested in life science. The people that were giving money, the family offices, the endowments, the foundations, they're all now going direct. And people go like, well, that's an interesting concept, and we have proven it out because we have 5,000 investors in our database. We have 10 categories, and 9 of those categories are not VCs, and so we'll go over that. So if you look at what's going on today, and specifically down in the R&D preclinical phase 1, or I should say up, everybody starts with family and friends, and then you go to angels, and then it used to be go to VCs. So now it's like kind of like family offices, foundations, venture philanthropy, patient groups, private equity, hedge funds, large pharma, and biotech. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now. So the VCs maintained this big picture in the landscape. They stopped getting money because investors weren't getting returns on their investment, and so a big void happened, and then the void was filled by this group of people right here. So my companies, the 3 companies I have, our whole life revolves around understanding those. So at my Redefining Early Stage Investment conference yesterday, we had 200 investors, and a lot of them were family offices, foundations, venture philanthropy, and patient groups, are all excited about early stage investment. Early stage is hot, and I don't know how long it will be hot for, but right now it's hot, so make hay while the sun shines. We have to go debunk some myths, and we need to explain like how these myths work. I don't know where they come from, and scientists, entrepreneurs who come from academia or from pharma, they hear these things, they go, you can't talk to an investor unless you get a referral, which is crazy because you can. And so we find that the scientists that we talk with, they build these like illusions or these things that aren't true, these walls, and then we have to take them down one at a time, and then we have to explain it to them. So when we talk about referral versus fit, we have a database of 5,000 investors, and we can literally go into our database and someone say, what do you do? I do small molecules for oncology, I'm preclinical. And we can go do that search, and we can come up with like 500 investors that we've interviewed and that told us they're looking for small molecules for oncology. So when you go to that investor and you put on the subject line, read your mandate, LSN partner, small molecule, and then you say, going to be in town for the JP Morgan, like to meet you, you are going to have an incredible high percentage of hit rate. We call hit rate when they return your phone call or they say, yeah, let's do a meeting. It's like ridiculous. When you spam people and you don't know who the heck they are and you just know he's an investor or she's an investor, you get 1 to 2% hit rate. When you know exactly what they're looking for because we've done the research and then you match yourself to them because it's a perfect fit, you have a really high rate of return, between 20 and 40%. And it sounds crazy, but we do these fundraising campaigns for people, and we do these mailings, and we get those rates. And so you can't underestimate the value of fit. And the problem is when people say, well, don't worry, just put me in front of the investor, I'll get the cash. That is so wrong. It's like, put me in front of an investor who's an expert in the world of diabetes, who understands what I'm doing with my diabetes product, and he will get me, and we will have a great relationship because it's based on fit. So that's some of the things you need to know. Last time, a guy in the back row goes, just a stranger, make a phone call to a stranger? And I'm going, well, yeah. And he goes, no, let me get this right. A person you don't know you can call up on the phone. It's like, yes, it's called selling. So if you know that the target, the person you want to call, is a fit for your product, and you call him up and you have a solution for him, he will be very glad to take your phone call. But in the world of referral, let's just do an example. Some guy is an investor in oncology, and he's an investor in glioblastoma. Well, everybody in his network knows that he's interested in cancer, but a few people know that he's actually interested in brain cancer. So he has to take 500 emails and 500 calls a week of people going, oh, my friend knows you and he said you're doing oncology, I'm doing breast cancer. Nope, I'm doing brain cancer. I'm doing leukemia, I'm doing blood cancer. Nope, I'm doing brain cancer. So all of these referrals cause an incredible amount of white noise in the industry. And so there's no reason not to do your research, because when you find an investor that's a fit for your product or service, and it's really a good fit because you know they've declared it and they've said it, and you know they're a fit, you're going to do really well. But when you go after people and you say, oh, he's cancer, well, nobody's just cancer. They're a particular form of cancer, and you got to figure out what that is. So peeling back the onion and understanding that. The other thing is, it's a numbers game. We had a really funny conversation yesterday when we did this presentation, and here's some facts. And I've had 25 researchers at one company for 5 years that did nothing but make phone calls. Got 7 at this company. And so we measure every single phone call. And so we know how long it takes, how many phone calls you have to make if you call someone that you don't know. And we've measured it. And it's somewhere between 12 and 15 phone calls to get an answer from somebody that you've never spoke to before. So most people say, I made the phone call, the guy didn't call me back, I'm done. No. I've called him 3 times. No. I've called him 6 times. You haven't even got up to the plate yet. You got to try 12, 15 times to get someone you don't know. And then if you have a conversation with them, and it was a good conversation, one conversation, you try and call them back, it takes somewhere between 9 and 12. And then if you have a really good conversation with them, you're developing a dialogue in a relationship, and you call the guy, it takes between 7 and 9. And then if it's really good with my family, my kids, if I want to talk to my kids, it takes between 3 and 5 attempts. I send them an email. I call them. I give them an in. That's how it works. I don't know why, but that's how it works. So people give up, and they don't understand it's a numbers game. And so we had this guy, she called the guy 26 times and left, she's a really nice person. She's super personable, very polite. And on the 26th phone call, the guy picks up the phone and goes, I am so sorry. I want to talk to Rick. Please book me right now. Open your schedule. Let's do it. And that's what happens. It's like they want to talk to you, but you got to go for it. You can't just say, I made a couple of phone calls. Okay, let's go. So when we get an investor mandate, this is what they look like. This particular one here is a blanked out family office out of San Francisco. And it looks like what they do is, what do they do, Jack?
Biotech Platform Technologies.
Biotech Platform Technologies. And you can go qualify yourself here, and at the end of the thing it says, if you're looking for this person, look for this guy, and tell him that you're part of the LSN, a partner with LSN, part of our network. And so when that guy gets an email from you, and he sees LSN in the tag, in the subject line, he knows that you read that mandate, and he knows that you know what he's looking for. And if you are what he is looking for and you tell him that, then he's going to return your phone call or answer your email. And it might not be, that day, but if you use phone canvassing and email canvassing to get a hold of that guy, you're going to get a hold of him because he knows it's a fit. So this is kind of, when you're thinking of, I have to go after investors, you got to find a list of investors that are a fit, and then you got to find the ones that are like a perfect match, and then you go after those guys. So we've talked a little bit about positioning, and now we're going to go to marketing collateral. Your marketing collateral is like super important. First of all, your brand is super important, and then your message is super important. So there's just 2 concepts. If you're raising money and you're a company and you want to go do it, you've got to figure out, okay, who's my brand, and what's my message? So it all starts with anything that you have, your business card. Like if I see another bridge or a Viking ship for a logo, I think I'll kill myself. But these people design these crazy logos that have nothing to do with their companies, and then they put these taglines that like changing the world, great technology, innovation, and it's like it just says nothing about what they do. You've got to be able to figure out, if you own a company, you've got to be able to figure out in 5 words describing, or 4 words or 3 words, or but not like a lot of words, a tagline that says exactly what you do. So this time, Jack one time brought in this professor, and we're fighting. I'm going, please tell me what you do. And his words are, 45 characters long. And I'm like, can you just dumb it down a little bit? Like, what do you do? And he just wouldn't tell me what he did in English. He had to give me these weird, long words that I didn't know what he was talking about. It turns out he was doing some stuff with Hep C. the Hep C virus. And, we talked for about, I don't know, it was a half an hour, 45 minutes. And so I'm a professor at UMass Boston. I teach an entrepreneurship class. And he's a professor. I'm like, dude, you're a professor. Can't you tell me what the heck you do? And he's going, well, I've been trying. And I'm like, no, you're not, because I just asked the question. Tell me, please. So after 45 minutes, he goes, I prevent the Hep C virus from replicating. And I'm like, what a beautiful tagline. That's like perfect. And so getting the taglines are so hard and so painful, but when you get it, it's just right. And so he's got this company name, his logo. Now he says, who am I? Prevents Hep C virus from replicating. And so people who are interested in investing in Hep C, when they see that guy's tagline on his business card or on his website or on his marketing collateral, they're going to go, I want to talk to that guy because I'm interested in the Hep C market. I've done my research. I know I want to invest in it. And this guy prevents the virus from replicating. Wow, that's interesting. So that's kind of things you have to think about. And then your tagline goes to your elevator pitch. And your elevator pitch is like 5, 6, 7 sentences that like describe who the heck you are and what you do. And this brings me back to another thing. We met these guys. So tell me about your elevator pitch. And it's like on and on and on and on. And I'm just kind of going, you gotta break it down. Well, it turns out that he's using combination therapeutic drugs to treat Duchenne, to relieve the stress and manage the lifestyle of these poor young boys who get it. And I'm going, wow, that's cool. So as combination therapy for AIDS elongated the patient's life and made it more manageable, you've kind of done the same thing for Duchenne. And I go, well, that's kind of what you want to say in your elevator pitch. So getting a tagline that's clear, using the metaphors that are out there, because AIDS is really a big problem, but because of combination therapies, we've really done a lot to make AIDS manageable. And now it's all over the place. People are using combination therapies to really help really bad chronic diseases, and it's a big deal. And when someone says, you know what they did for AIDS? Well, I'm doing the same thing for Duchenne. They get it. They know what they're talking about. So it's your job to figure out, how do I build my brand? How do I deliver this message really, really effectively? And then we go to the executive summary. That's got to be 2 pages, and it's kind of like you got your tagline, you've got your elevator pitch. Now let's talk about this. You need to know who your management team is. You need to know who you are. So if you're a CEO of a company and you're really a scientist, then you need to go find a business guy. And if you're a business guy and you got this thing going on because you found some technology, but you're not a scientist, you really need to go get a scientist. And yes, we know you outsource all of your work because we outsource everything in the life science arena. That's cool. But you have to say something about your management team that makes it compelling, and you have to understand that the worst thing you can do is go to a guy who's decided he's investing in diabetes and start explaining to him, well, the diabetic market for the baby boomers and the people in Asia and the people in Africa, they know the market size. They've got it. And so if you're going to waste an executive summary, you want to keep someone's attention, and you're explaining to an expert in oncology or diabetes or Alzheimer's, you start explaining the market, it's a waste of everybody's time. You want to put really crisp, clear things that this guy needs to know about your company. And one of the big things people do is they need to know, what's the management team all about? Who's the management team? And then the executive summary really starts to be this thing called a story. If you start to talk about your life and how you got to a point where you're now a scientist, entrepreneur that's raising money in the life science arena, there's a story behind it. You've got to look at that story and get that story really crisp, because that story really is going to be your executive summary, and then it's going to turn into your slide deck, and then we're going to put it in the website. And that story has to be compelling. And so everybody we talk to, they go, well, I don't really have a story, I'm just this. And then we tease the story from them, and it's always fabulous. Like this one person we were dealing with one time, she's a maverick. She never believes anything anybody does. And so back in the day when, was it omega-3 fatty acids, they thought promoted cancer, she proved that it prevented cancer and changed everybody's view. And it's when you tell that story to an investor, they love you. It's she does things differently. She doesn't think like everybody else. So those are really cool things. So getting your story straight, figuring out how to tell a story. And everybody's got a story, and everything is different, and you just got to like figure it out. You got to make it short and cool and compelling and dynamic. Then we get the elevator pitches the story, and then we turn the slide deck in, and we're elongating the story, and then we're starting to introduce management team and data and risk mitigation and some of the things that a person needs to know. And then we take all the other stuff and we put it into the website. So going into phase 2, small molecule for oncology, doing all this stuff, all the credentials that you need. And I met the CEO and he goes, "We need your help." And I said, "Well, send me the PowerPoint." He goes, "I don't really want to." I'm like, "Send me the PowerPoint. I need to see the thing." And he goes, "Well, I really can't. I can bring it to you like on a little disk drive." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "It's 280 pages." I'm like, "It can't be 280 pages." So then we go to meet these guys, and they come in, and these guys were at least 10 years older than me. 280 pages. Their website had a bucolic scene of shadows holding hands around a fire or something weird. And I'm going, these guys are, they've got all this great capability and experience, but they have no clue about branding and messaging. So, and I had to go through this prolonged 8-week period with them where it was torture, but we got their branding and messaging down. We got them to explain in simple English what they did. We took the 280 pages and we put it through the website, and we made it so it was really navigable. And they had like great data, and they had great stuff going on. So they just recently got $7 million from a family office in Zurich. And that took them, I think, 18 months. So when after the 8 weeks, they basically said, "Dennis, thank you. You taught us to simplify our message. You taught us to listen to the customer, to present ourselves simply so that everybody understands. And now from our admin all the way up to our scientists, we're all singing out of the same hymn book." And that's kind of like some of the things you have to think of when you're going to raise money, because some investor could come in and sit in your lobby and they go to your admin, "So, how do you like working here? What are you guys doing?" And she goes, "Oh, we developed a small molecule for this, and we're doing this in a particular way that's a little bit different than anybody else." The guy goes, "Wow, those people really got it from the bottom all the way to the top." So you got to kind of think like that. What we say is, once you get your marketing, branding and messaging and those things down, those are kind of like ante into the game. And by the way, that's like 25 grand to do all that. Get your logo, get your tagline, get your elevator pitch, executive summary, PowerPoint, website. It's 25 grand. And then everybody says, "Well, I don't have that kind of money." And it's like, okay, then don't do it. But what they do is, "But my wife has a degree in graphics design," and it's like everybody else is getting this really crisp information, and then this guy's wife, who's a graphic designer, does it. Or they go to a graphic designer who's really good but has no idea about life science, so they get this thing that looks really good. It does LinkedIn, it does Facebook, it does Twitter and all this stuff, but nobody cares. It's the only reason you want to do that website. You want to go right to an investor. And the investors tell us they will get an email from somebody, and the email will have a link to the website. And if they like what the tagline was, saying, "I'm a fit for you, I read your mandate," they'll click on the website. You have 3 to 5 seconds to get the investor's attention. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we work on in that thing. So like, for instance, a lot of people put the management team like 3 tabs over and 4 tabs down. Like, why would you do that to your management team? These guys right here. And these 2 guys are famous guys in the industry, oncology, biochemists and biophysicists. And so we put those guys right on the front page. But like, a web designer would go, "Why would you put the management team on the front page? It's like 3 tabs over and 3 tabs down. It's about you." And it's like, no, it's about the investor. It's about, you got the investor's time for 3 to 5 seconds, and you've got to figure out a way to capture his attention. You got to have a tagline, you got to have an elevator pitch. I'm also a huge fan of video, by the way. If you can put a really cool 2 to 3 minute video on site that just does that 3-minute pitch, you can really explain a lot about who you are and what you did and what's great about your company. And it's really, really, really compelling. You have to get a list of targets, and like I like to say, you got to go find like 300, 400, 500 people that are a fit for your sector and stage of development. You just got to do it. And so when you do that, you now have about 500 people to go after, and that 500 people to go after might turn into 100 that are showing an interest, and that 100 that's showing an interest might wind up being 50, and then it might wind up being 25, and then it might wind up being 12, and then it might wind up being 3 or 4, and that's kind of what happens. It's kind of like that. those are the number, that's the number game that you have to play to get an allocation of capital. It's just, that's how the numbers work. So a lot of the people we talk to, they make this gigantic mistake and they go, oh, you know what, I've got this friend, and we got this friend and family, and we got these referrals, and I got this other guy over here. And we just had 5 fundraising CEOs at my conference yesterday. They did Tales from the Road. And every single one of them said, it took longer than I thought, it cost more than I thought, and I needed to have a plan B, because every time I went with plan A, somebody did something that screwed me up and delayed my process. So I like to say, if you've got a bunch of friends who say, don't worry, this is hot, we're going to go to the Today Show, the people are going to be calling us, it's going to be wonderful. It's a pure numbers game. Find people that are a fit, get your global target list, work your global target list, and when you do that, you will be very, very, very successful, and you don't depend on any one thing. So I was talking to a guy today, he said, well, I've got these guys that I'm pretty sure it's going to work, and I'm going to wait before I make a decision on going global with my fundraising campaign because I know these guys. And I just said, you're crazy. You have no leverage. If one of these guys decides something, you now have to start over, which means you've got to start day one for 9 to 18 months. And so you've got to be proactive. And you have to go for it. And when you have a bunch of people in dialogue, when you have a bunch of investors that said, hey, I'm interested in you, let's continue this dialogue, you've got leverage. All of a sudden, those guys that you thought were so good that were going to probably be very predatory with their terms and conditions, all of a sudden you say, you know what, you guys are too predatory for me. I've got a conversation going on over here. I think I'll move this forward before I do anything with you. And now you've got leverage. And so these are some of the things that people need to think about when they're getting a target list of investors to go after. What are the reasons to do it, and what are the reasons why? Are we out of time? Thank you.